All right. Well, I think we'll go ahead and get started here. Welcome everybody who's attending this webinar presented by SolidCAD. My name is Patrick Rennie, and with me I have my colleague Colin Gaudette. Today we're going to be looking at site earthworks quantities, topsoil stripping, subgrading, and earthwork surface automation with the CTC toolset. So I'll be kind of introducing everything, and then Colin will jump into a presentation with a little bit of a demo as well. So as mentioned, I'm your host for this webinar. My name is Patrick Rennie. I am an account manager at SolidCAD based in Calgary, Alberta. And Colin Gaudette is going to be the technical consultant for today's webinar, and he's based in Ontario. In terms of an agenda, I'm going to quickly touch on who SolidCAD is and who CTC is as well. And then Colin is going to jump into his presentation. First, we're going to look at native Civil 3D earthworks calculations and how they're done right out of the box. From there, we're going to look at CTC's Earthworks Processor and how things are a little bit different. And then finally, we'll look at labeling and tabling within the platform as well. So what do we do at SolidCAD? At SolidCAD, we help our clients implement technology and optimize workflows. And we do this in a few ways. We do this by providing software and the needed design software to make things happen. And then we can also provide insight and consultation for how you might be able to make your work as efficiently and as accurate as possible, either through training, implementation, or any other support that we offer. In terms of the fields that we work with, or our verticals, we work with the architecture, engineering, and construction industries, as well as infrastructure, manufacturing, and plant. Now, Colin and I are both part of the infrastructure side of the SolidCAD organization. And in terms of what we do from a services perspective within infrastructure, we provide a variety of services, including training, consulting, programming, and we also do things like our own in-house integrations, workflow optimizations or workflow assessments for your organization, and then finally events just like this one that are free to attend for anybody who is interested in learning more. In terms of training, SolidCAD does offer training coast to coast. So from all the way from Burnaby, BC to Nova Scotia. Right now, all of our training is currently conducted virtually due to the pandemic. However, we do look forward to seeing in-person training start up again when it is appropriate. As mentioned, with our remote solutions, SolidCAD does have a variety of services and tools to support you remotely, whether that's training, implementation, project mentoring, general consulting, or some customization enhancements you're looking for. We're a phone call away. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Colin, who's going to talk a little bit about CTC, the different suites that are available, and then jump into the Earthworks Processor. Colin?
Excellent. Thanks, Pat. Merry Christmas, everyone. Happy holidays. We'll try to be as festive as possible here. If you guys have any questions at all throughout the presentation, don't hesitate. Punch those into the Q&A panel. We'll review them all at the end, and we're going to go through some of this earthwork stuff today and explore how CTC can help alleviate some of the growing pains and some of the tedious tasks within there. I figured just before we get started, we'll talk about quickly the civil CTC offerings that they've got. So they are an add-on onto Civil 3D. They've also got some awesome tools for Revit, but we're infrastructure team. We're going to focus on the civil world today. They have two civil suites, one being the manager suite. This one's more so some dynamic control over your templates and things like that. Taking some of those Excel-like interfaces that you look at with layers and description keys and things like that, pull those out into Excel for some much faster documentation and manipulation. And then we've also got what we're going to be talking about today, the Project Suite. And the Project Suite has tools for a variety of different tasks as you kind of go along through the life cycle of a design project. But again, today we're going to be taking a look at Earthworks Processor. So let's dive into this. Generally, what I like to do before we jump into the actual tools themselves, I want to take a look at the workflow and the native tools that this is hopefully replacing or making a little bit easier for you guys. So when we're talking about the native Earthworks tools, this is after we've gotten an FG surface. We've found we've updated and completed our EG surface based off of our surveys and all of the data collected out in the field. And at this point, when we're talking about site grading, we're talking about we need some subgrade depth regions. We need, obviously, the subgrade is going to be deeper in a heavy duty asphalt zone than what it is in maybe a topsoil zone or something like that, or a topsoil area of the site. And then it's kind of a process of creating and combining surfaces together to get our earthworks volumes and our subgrade surfaces and all of that, and then taking those volumes through reports or tables, pulling them out into Civil 3D, or pulling them out into tables in Civil 3D, or out into Excel, or whatever the case. The problem with that is it's a little bit time consuming. Variable depths between regions can get confusing, and updating can be tedious. Not to mention, the bigger the site, the harder it is to keep track of everything, right? Because we're doing all of this step by step by step. So we'll take a look at kind of the native process here that this Earthworks processor is going to replace. So I'm going to find my Civil 3D tab and open it up. And Pat, you can see my Civil 3D here, I think, right?
Yep, you're good.
Awesome, excellent. So we've got a simple little site here, and this is what we're going to be working with. This site, if you zoom in, I've got a couple different simple polylines here. I've got them on different layers because this is the first step that we have to do. We've got in our Prospector tab, we've already completed kind of the design. So I've got my EG surface, I've got my FG surface, and I've got a couple just shell surfaces with nothing in them right now. No definitions or anything like that, just to kind of speed us along here. And now with all of these polylines, what we've done is we've kind of outlined the areas where each of our subgrade regions starts and stops. So if I'm talking about my asphalt in and around here, well, it needs to stop so that I can show the curb here. So we've got lines to represent both of these, and then we move into maybe a sodded area over here and all of that. And now it makes these, the only thing we have to do with these polylines, two things. We got to make sure that they're closed polylines down here. And of course, I'm covering it with my tooltips here. And I also have to make sure that I've got an elevation. Because with this workflow, what we're going to do is actually take that elevation and use these closed polylines as break lines for our surfaces. And then we can start to build out a multi-surface process here that's going to get us some earthworks volumes as well as our subgrade volumes. And this is all sort of stuff that has to happen natively. So for the asphalt, we're looking at 0.55. For the sidewalk, we're slightly less here, we're 0.3. And now we have these all as positive values because what I'm going to do is the very first step with all of this is I will take 1, 2, 3, and I know I've got 4 different types of region. I'll just do a quick select similar. And we have to create a depths surface. And that's, I've already created the surface. So all I'm going to do is take all of these and add them as the only definitions in this surface. I'll add them as break lines. I'll call them subgrade regions. They all have a depth close to 0 that represents the actual depth of that subgrade region. We apply all of those and we get a surface in here. Now, if I go see what that surface actually is, just go to the home tab here real quick. Let's go profile, surface profile. And we're going to add it to this cut right here that's cutting along. Not doing a very good job at keeping everything in view for you. It's cutting along this alignment right here. So we'll take this, we'll add the depth surface in there and maybe give this a nice little style of subgrade shows up nicely. Click OK. And now that, as you can see, it's inverted of it's almost an inverted copy of what our subgrade needs to be. So all of it very close to 0 though. So I'm going to take that, I'm going to delete this. Now, the next thing, once we've got that, this Earthworks depths, the next step in the process would be to create a volume surface. So I'm going to create a surface. I'm going to call this subgrade vols. Perfect. No display is fine because these surfaces are pretty ugly. Oh, and not a grid. We're going to get a tin volume surface. For the math on this to work, what we do is we compare the depths as the base versus the FG as the comparison surface. Now we can add our cut fill factors if we need to. This surface isn't for getting accurate volumes. What this does is mathematically actually places a profile exactly where we need it. So again, let's go back here, add a surface profile, and we'll add this subgrade volumes. Let's just pick a style that makes sense here. And those subgrade volumes now sit exactly where we need them to. Now all we have to do is compare the subgrade volumes, this guy right here, against my EG surface to start getting my earthworks quantities, my cut fills of what I need to cut it down. Now, this is neglecting the fact that we absolutely need to do some topsoil stripping. The topsoil stripping is fairly straightforward though. All we have to do is drop this surface and then get some volumes out of it. What we're going to try and do though is just for the time's sake, we're going to compare EG against my subgrade surface. Now the problem with that is I can't take a volume of a volume surface. So what I'll have to do, I'll take this shell of a surface here, Earthworks volumes, and simply paste in the volume surface. I'll go to edits, paste surface, and this is a little trick that gives you everything that a volume surface was, just so that you can use it as a tin surface. And now we can come up here, create another surface. We'll make it a volume surface. WK for Earthworks. And we can compare maybe our EG versus our subgrade right here. Notice I don't have any of those volume surfaces in there. And that Earthworks surface, if I go to the surface properties, is then going to give me all of my volumes that I need for my cut fill. So that's the way to do it natively. It's a number of steps within the process. But this is probably the most effective way to get our Earthworks quantities in a semi-dynamic fashion. Now, if I switched all of these to rebuild automatically, I could get this pretty close to updating, like consistently for me, such that if my FG changed, or if my EG changed, or if any of these any of these boundaries shifted in any way. If I needed this to be 0.2, if I click enter, that should push its way through all of this, but it's not perfect. So I'll rebuild, and that should force the rebuild for all of these. But again, sometimes these, there we go. So I pushed it out here, and I get to see the difference as it goes through. And this is just the native functions. So it's pretty good, but as these regions change, as we add new regions, we have to go back and add those new regions to our depth surface and have things filter through. The faster way to do this, if I flip back to my PowerPoint here, is to use Earthworks Processor. So this is the tool in the CIM Project Suite that takes an EG, an FG, and some subgrade regions, and automatically creates everything for you and gives you a lot more streamlined process for labeling and tabling all of that stuff out. So that's what we're going to take a look at here. Show you that slide and then pop back into Civil 3D. We'll just flip into a fresh version of this drawing. I just had 2 copies of it. With the exact same results here, I still have all of these polylines at their correct elevations. And in this case, I only have the 3 surfaces. I haven't even created shell surfaces yet. I've got a temporary grading surface that helped me get my FG, and then I've got my EG surface. Now, if I go over here to Earthworks Processor and open this tool up, it opens up an interface where we can start setting all of these values. Now, there's lots of options in here as to how you'd like to display all of this stuff. And we'll take a peek in here quickly because things like our stripping depth and our cut and fill factors here, I can update those. I can update my table precisions. It's also going to go behind the scenes and create all of these surfaces for me. So not only the subgrade depths, subgrade tin and volume and earthworks, but also the stripping depths and my stripping volume surface for topsoil. And then I've also got a lot of control over my labeling and tabling, which we'll take a look at soon. In Earthworks Processor, to get this working, we simply hit the green plus, and everything in this tool is calculated in Earthworks sets. So I can call this my Earthworks site. All I have to do is apply a proposed, so my FG surface, an existing, so my EG surface, and those polyline subgrade regions. Now, I think it's also worth noting, these don't have to be polylines, they could be feature lines as well. And the handy thing with feature lines is you can have a region with a variable depth that kind of slopes as it progresses. And this tool will still take that into account. When we grab those regions, though, we have 2 different options. I can select them directly from the drawing, but my favorite thing to do, or my preferred thing to do, is use a filter. When I click the filter and click the 3 dots there, how would I like to cast a net into Civil 3D to grab a number of polylines or feature lines? I can cast a net based off of layers, layer descriptions, styles, names. Let's grab it in terms of layers. I can type them in, but if I don't know that, we can absolutely just go pick that from the drawing and it's going to populate that layer in there. Better yet, it also responds to those wildcard characters, so I can grab multiple layers at the same time, and we'll click OK here. It produces all of those different subgrade regions. By default, the name of each region is just a layer. Now I can absolutely double click in here and change all of that as well. By default, it's taking those subgrade depths and it's taking the elevations from each of those polylines. At any point, I could check that off and say in this sidewalk or curb area, this actually just needs to be 0.25. It doesn't need to be quite as deep. We can edit all of this stuff manually, but we've set it globally to start. After that, all we simply have to do is, actually, let's add a couple labels in here. Perfect. And then we'll run this. So to set that up, really all I did was a proposed, an existing, and grabbed all of my regions. It's going to produce it all and come up with a value for me. Now, once I've got that value, notice it is slightly different, and that's because I've changed some of the values in my regions. I can bump this out to an AutoCAD table or directly to an Excel file. Let's take a look at the AutoCAD table to start, because I want to look at all of the stuff that's actually been produced inside of this drawing to start with. So that AutoCAD table dumps all the values in here. It uses a style that we can edit, obviously, because all of these tools in the CIM Project Suite, they don't create anything proprietary. They're just great tools to kind of reach into Civil 3D and allow you to use the tools in Civil 3D and the objects in Civil 3D a lot more efficiently. It's not going to say that if you run Earthworks Processor on this, that someone from a different company or a different department who doesn't have the CIM Project Suite, they can still use the drawing. They just have to do it a little bit slower. Looks like we've added a couple different styles in here. If I zoom in, I get to see, so this label is set to show my stripping volume, my cut, fill, subgrade depth, all of that good stuff. Now it looks like my subgrade depth isn't super accurate. I'd like a little bit more precision on that. And on top of that, if we look up in our Prospector tab, Earthworks Processors also put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different surfaces inside of a nice little folder up here. And if we go and take a look what each of those looks like, well, some of the nice ones, because you don't need to see the subgrade depths and stuff like that. We can add maybe, let's add the stripping and subgrade in here. Let's add the topsoil stripping volumes and subgrade. We'll click OK. And we get to see how this looks. So it also did the stripping for us, and it's made that a consistent value across all of here. That being said, we can edit that if we didn't need a consistent value in each of those regions. Now, if I wanted to go and change up the way the table looked or the way these labels look, I can go back into Earthworks Processor and do exactly that. Jump back into Earthworks Processor. Keeps popping up on a different screen for me. Because in options here, it listened to me. It put all of my styles for my surfaces are all on no display. All of my labels right here, though, this is everything that's contained inside of the label. Right, so we had the name, proposed, existing, subgrade depth. If I want to change the subgrade depth, double click right there. I can see that this is in meters. And I can add a little bit more precision in here. Click OK. If we want to add other things, we can also jump in here and hit the 3 dots, and we've got other things that we can populate in here. What's the layer that this was included on? What's the area, for example? So I can add the area of that region in there as well. I can take this, move it up to here maybe, double click in and see what it's looking like. So this is showing in square feet. I need that in square meters. And maybe we'll just do this to 1 decimal place. We can edit all of those things, and then we can rerun this, and it's going to update for us. There we are. We can see the area jumped in there, the subgrade depth down here as well. Right here and here. And now if I wanted to take this and export directly to Excel, this is even better. This is even easier. So we've got all of our totals right here. Let's click the export to Excel and pick a folder that I can place this in. And we get to see what this is actually dumped into Excel. And it's the exact same formatting as what the Earthworks AutoCAD table was, just in Excel right here for us. So we can see everything. We can manipulate things. It's just Excel at this point. But we can edit the formatting of the type of table that goes into Excel as well. So in a matter of 5-10 minutes, I've got accurate quantities all exported out directly to Excel from my Civil 3D design. Anytime it's taking volumes from here, it's worth noting these are taking bound volumes. So if I go to the analysis tab, it's your volumes dashboard, and it's not populating inside of the volumes dashboard, but it's taking advantage of this guy right here, the bound volumes, to get accurate volumes at each region and then adding them all together for you. So at this point, I'd like to pass this back to the PowerPoint and pass this back to Pat to see if we have any questions.
Yeah, thanks, Colin. So as Colin mentioned, there is a little Q&A tab on the Zoom webinar that we're on. If you have any questions, feel free to pop them there, and we'll answer them live here. So we'll give it a couple minutes to see if anything comes in.
Sure. Yeah, it looks like there's nothing quite yet.
Of course, as well, if you go, oh, I have some questions after the webinar, sometimes that of course happens. We do have a SolidCAD line directly on our website that you can reach out to. Also, our emails are on the contact us slide that is currently on display, and you can feel free to reach out to either myself or Colin at any time.
All right, nothing so far, Pat. I think what we'll do is we can probably leave it at that. And again, if you do have any questions, you want to try this out, you want a company specific demo, we're more than happy to go about that. Or if you have simple questions about it, absolutely reach out to Patrick or myself directly, or through our support line, and we will be more than happy to get in contact with you guys and answer those questions.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for the time. Thank you, Colin, for the presentation, and we look forward to seeing you in the next webinar. Talk to you soon.
Merry Christmas. Happy holidays, everyone.
See ya.